So I will just very quickly welcome you to the United States Globe Water Cooler series. So we do these about every week, and they highlight a different globe partnership within the United States and something that they want to share. So it may be an agenda for a workshop, it may be a skill, it may be a technique. It could also be a resource that they want to share that they've either developed or that they use themselves that they think has a really good alignment with the GLOBE program. So I am honored today to present Catherine Bursk, and she's from one of our GLOBE partners in Maine, so not that far away from me. Sorry, I should introduce myself first. I'm Jennifer Bourgeot, and I'm the United States Country Coordinator. I work out of the University of New Hampshire. And sometimes my colleagues join me at these meetings, and sometimes I'm all by myself, and sometimes they're hosted by our other colleague, Dr. Jody Haney, who works out of Ohio. Let's see. Okay. So with that, now I'll introduce our guest speaker from the Gulf of Maine Research Institute, just a little ways away from me. And they are a GLOBE partnership. They've been a GLOBE partnership for a couple years, and they are really getting into doing GLOBE more now. And also they have a really great resource called Nature Notes, which I heard about a couple of years ago from Lee Peak, who is the education lead at Gulf of Maine Research Institute, and I have gotten to know her. And this is a great resource. There's also a couple GLOBE partners who have been using it and modifying it, but we thought we'd start with the source first. And after that, we'd love to have a discussion and with the time we have left. So water coolers are just these informational pieces, and then all of us kind of talking about or sharing ideas of how we can implement this ourselves. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So yeah, I'm from GMRI, and I'm the project manager for findings from the field, which is what Nature Notes are a part of. And we are a GLOBE partner. There we go. So here, I don't know if you can use this QR code, but this is the website where you can find everything you need. And I will also share the slides as soon as I can grab the link here, which I have, and put it in the chat, which I haven't done in some time. There we go. I got it. I'm on top of it. Did you get it? No, you didn't get it. You didn't get it yet. Everyone. There we go. So feel free to use these materials as you see fit. GMRI, all of our curriculum and materials are available to the public and or educators, and you can use it as you see fit. All right, so today we're going to be looking at brief introduction to findings from the field and introducing one of the pieces that we use a lot, which is Nature Notes. And I'm going to sort of set us up for understanding the framework around Nature Notes because I was a teacher for 10 years and I don't think I know how to stop being a teacher. My daughter really loves that, that I'm trying to teach when I'm at home and she's not in school. But so I hope it is helpful to understand the important pieces that make up the Nature Note. And moving on. that's me. I used to be a middle and high school teacher. I'm a curriculum designer and now a project manager as well for findings from the field. And you guys have been so nice to share where you're from. Um, so what is findings from the field? Um, First of all, it started as a journal in 2018, and we have, just like Globe, we have community science projects here at the Gulf of Maine Research Institute, which is why it's a really nice fit, Nature Notes and Globe Protocols. And the findings from the field was a way to have students share what they were finding. So they would go out and they would do uh, um, primary data collection for scientists in the state of Maine for a topic that's important, for example, hemlock woolly adelgid, which is attacking the hemlock trees. And findings from the field gave them a place to share their findings with the scientific community of other middle school scientists. And it started out just middle school and primarily research articles. So the full thing, abstract, methods, results. We have since changed that a bit. So we had our journal. We'll be going on to the 8th volume this year. It was an opportunity for student scientists to practice skills and habits of professional scientists, investigating, observing, writing, and peer reviewing. And that's a really important piece of findings from the field is it's not just students who are writing these pieces and publishing them, they're peer reviewing work from students from other schools. We have since also included um, ways for them to connect in person, and that includes the symposium. So similar to Globe, we also have a symposium where students come together. This includes professional scientists. So professional scientists, for example, from GMRI will also share their work in the same format and poster format that the students share. So as to really create a community of scientists. And it doesn't matter how old you are or what grade you're in or what level of scientist you are. We're all scientists, we're all curious, and we're all trying to understand the world around us better. Before I go on, any questions?
I don't see any in the chat right now.
Okay, all right. So I'm here to talk to you about nature notes. So nature notes are one type of submission. And as wonderful as it is for students to be participating in the full research article, that's not always feasible for our students and our teachers, because that's a lot of work. So we have a smaller format, which is called a nature note. And a nature note is essentially a scientific observation. It's an opportunity for students to engage in the authentic science process without necessarily having to move through all of those conventions. There is still peer review. It provides an easy entry point. It's complex observational practice. And I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit. And it deepens understanding through discussion. So the process of writing a nature note, it's not just the writing, it's students coming together, sharing their observations, trying to deepen their inquiry. And nature notes were ultimately created through professional scientific observations. And professional scientific observations include background information, observation, and a question or idea. And those are the basic pieces of nature notes. So Frontiers EcoPics are an example of a scientific observation. And you can see these three pieces in this published work. There is a whole lesson that goes along with Frontiers EcoPix that deconstructs them and breaks them down into their three pieces to help students sort of understand those frameworks and start to build a set of shared um, transitional academic terms that they can use to pull from when they start to do their writing, because that's important. It's not, we want them to do the thinking, but we also want them to feel comfortable moving that onto paper. Uh, so in the chat, if you could just share your thoughts, questions, concerns, quandaries, what have you, to the following quote, which is, "Phenomena happen, phenomena are observed, and phenomena are recorded. How difficult can it be to observe scientifically?" Right? What's the big deal? Like, so what? I mean, yes, it's important, but like, do we really need to go through a series of lessons to show kids how to observe? That seems a little overkill. I don't actually think that, obviously. I wouldn't be doing this otherwise. But I can't necessarily see your chat, although I could if I pulled it up. There we go. Oh, wow. I'm curious what you guys have to say. So many different things going on. Absolutely. It's hard to capture everything. That's definitely a piece. And for students, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? Unfortunately, they're not just thinking about what you're putting in front of them, they're also thinking about a lot of other things happening in the classroom. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, absolutely. What makes for a good observation is going to be dependent on who you are, what you're going to be observing is going to be dependent on the experience that you're bringing. Yeah, it's a skill that can be practiced and improved. And like a lot of things that as adults we get used to just doing, we forget that there has to be explicit teaching for some of these things. So we're already starting out with the idea that it's an important skill that we really need to help students, support students in moving towards something that is scientific, right? Something a little bit more deeper and nuanced. And we're going to do that. I'm going to make you guys do that. Sorry. Again, I can't shut it off. So skillful scientific observations. What makes a good one? Detailed. That's very helpful. Specific. Also slightly close to detailed, but uses the different senses. Okay, so that's like a very baseline of a good observation. Not quite enough. So how are everyday observations different from scientific observations? And we're going to explore that a little bit. So we're first going to look at something. So I have this video clip. It is from Cornell's Feeder Watch program. They have a ton of live webcams as well as tips to help you use those live webcams. And I put that as a helpful link at the bottom of the slideshow. And so we're just gonna observe. So I just want you guys to observe. I have just observed in the process of watching this video, it is the wrong clip. And we're just gonna go with it. We're just gonna see what happens, because this is what happens in the classroom. You're like, oops, oh well. Um, nope, that's not what I wanted. There we go. Okay. Still, we can still do the next thing, which is how would you rate your observation, right? So from 1 to 5, did you, so in the one column is going to be notice a bird is different from other organisms. Did you notice features, but not necessarily see how they connect? Describe features, but maybe it's not necessarily related to a topic or a concept. Name kinds of birds, but have no idea what that means. Or are you getting a little bit further along, which is you notice how different birds relate to and with each other. Notice patterns that connect to function or behavior, describe features, name and organize birds based on groups. And then 5 being notice and describe features based on disciplinary structure, like taxonomy, chunk information to notice and group birds. Describe features as part of a complex system related to complex relationships or infer function and behavior from morphology. Where were you guys? I think that because I was focusing on the fact that it was the wrong video the whole time and not noticing anything, I think I'm a 1. Personally, I noticed there were different birds. Nice, Jennifer. Yeah, awesome. You guys are great and adults, and I'm very glad you're at that level because you're adults and that you already kind of know all this stuff, but we're just going to do it for fun. But lots of times when you introduce students to something like this, they're not necessarily going to be at a number 3, right? They're probably going to be, I see 2 birds. One has a red top to its head. Yes, that is an accurate observation. It is detailed, it is specific, it's using a sense, but it doesn't connect to anything we may have studied, right? That's what we want. We want students not just to observe, but we want them to connect with their learning in our classes. So, this part, so the 1 to 5 is actually based on a framework. An observational framework that was written by Eberbach and Crowley. And they wrote a paper where they were looking at the early version of Cornell's ornithology feeder watch program. It started out with, we are going to give teachers bird feeders, and kids are going to make observations, and then we're going to give those observations to ornithologists, and and everybody's going to get information and it's going to be fantastic, and look at this authentic work that kids are doing. Yes, they were doing authentic work, but it wasn't successful in the way they hoped it would be. And when they looked back at the program, they noticed some places like there was they underestimated the complexity of the practice of observing, how the disciplinary knowledge is interrelated, and the degree to which students needed scaffolding and support. Knowing these things and looking at sort of what Eberbach and Crowley uncovered has allowed us to sort of create a framework around the nature note, and helping students move toward that scientific observation as opposed to the everyday observation. There's a quote, I'm not going to bother reading it. So this is a video that we recorded using the 3 big pieces of the nature note. What do you notice? What do you know? What do you wonder? And this is part of our Lab Venture program, which is an interactive program where students come in and learn about lobsters and black sea bass and a whole lot of other things. But if we look, I'm just gonna play it. I'm gonna play. This lovely person is going to be talking about things that
My name
they
is
notice.
Samat Abdurraqib. I'm currently the executive director of Maine Humanities Council. I'm former volunteer leader for Outdoor Afro. I noticed that the eastern bluebirds, they're just sticking around longer. So I'm a big birder. And when I first moved here 12 years ago, I thought that the eastern bluebirds went away and they came back the beginning of the spring, so in March. And I started to notice that I would see them in February and then I would see them in January. And now I pretty much see them year round. The observation stood out to me because I always associate bluebirds with spring. People put out the bluebird boxes and you can see them in fields. I remember when I first moved here, I would go birding and I can remember feeling warm and the sun on me and walking outside and seeing the bluebirds busy around the bird boxes. I remember the first time I saw one in February, there was still snow on the ground. And it stood out to me because it wasn't in its full mating plumage, but they're a beautiful color blue. And that beautiful color blue was really contrasted against the dirty white snow, and it felt a little shocking to me. I was confused. I'm curious about whether or not their presence here through the colder winter months, whether or not that's indicative of climate change. I kind of assume that. But then I also have bigger questions about whether or not their presence here, how that affects the total bird population, eastern bluebird population in Maine. I wonder if there's an abundance here now, overabundance here now. I wonder if any of the bluebirds leave or if they all just kind of hang out here. I wonder how that affects food supply for bluebirds and other birds who eat similar things to the bluebirds, chickadees who stay here during the winter. I just wonder if the presence of more birds affects the food sources of other birds. I made these observations when I would be intentionally going out and birding, but I started to notice bluebirds staying here through the winters when I would just be out visiting friends. As long as you can take the time to notice what's around you or just be aware of what's familiar in your surroundings, you can notice the changes in your neighborhood. You can start to notice the changes just thinking about what you're used to and what has shifted, over the years. What is different now? I think it's important to be aware because things in the natural world change because of our behaviors, or something is impacting a species or some plant life, and that makes everything else change. And so it's really important to notice these things, even the smallest change. You just never know all the things that that's connected to. And so it's interesting and it's fascinating.
All right. Okay.
They knew I was underwater.
Apologies. All right. So, as you can see, Sama is coming with a large amount of experience, right? She's not just showing up and she's like, oh, look at the birds. They're blue. They're pretty. She's using a collection of background information that she has been storing and building over time. And that knowledge, that storage of knowledge that she has is what allows her to make that connection about, well, wait a second, now I'm seeing these bluebirds all the time. This is not what I expect to see. What's happening? And then she takes that ecological knowledge a little bit further and starts asking, what are the implications of this, right? So the video I was supposed to show you was about blue jays. And I found a blue jay video, so we're going to watch a blue jay video. So here's some background information about blue jays. I also have no idea what this blue jay video is going to show us. So your guess is as good as mine, except there's going to be blue jays. What we know about blue jays, and you guys might know more because you're ornithologists or birders, and I am not. But I know, based on the information that I collected, that they have complex social systems and tight family bonds. Their love of acorns helped spread oak trees after the last glacial period. Very cool. Thank you, Blue Jays. Prefer hopper feeders on opposed to hanging feeders. The black bridle across the face and neck varies and may help them recognize each other. And they lower their crests or raise their crests when they're feeding peacefully with family and flock members. So I don't think the next one is, no, I think it's the same thing. So I'm going to play a different video and we're going to see what I get. You guys are using your hearing senses, I know, because you can hear it, but you can't see it. All right, there we go. Okay. Now that I've done that and can't find my other thing anymore. Is it here? Is it there? There we go. All right, moving on. Okay, we're not doing breakout groups, but we can in the chat share some of our observations. Anything that you happen to notice in this second video? And if you're thinking about, well, what am I going to share? Also consider what you already know about birds. So what maybe did I share in that slide beforehand that might relate to blue jays or ecology or something else that you may know? Most birds were in the tray. A couple were on the hanging feeder. I definitely noticed that there were more in the tray over time than the feeder. There were a lot of blue jays. One seemed to be supervising. One was left out, yes. Poor blue jay. Something I definitely noticed was that their crests were down. And so I'm, given that and knowing what I learned, are they part of the same family group? I also noticed on the hanging feeder, one feeding another. So that was one question I had. Are they all part of the same family group? I'm wondering if you guys also, while watching this and thinking about this and hearing about some of the observations that other people had, what questions you might have about what you saw. So they seem to have pairs. Were there pairs, right? Was on a lookout in some way. Yep. Is there a bird that's more dominant than the others, right? Because we know in a lot of social groups that naturally happens, right? Naturally, I don't know, but it's the way it is, right? Among wolves, for example, there's one that is considered alpha. Although I've heard some new information that maybe that's a little different and I don't know yet, but just saying. So what is the structure? Like when you have all these blue jays together, what is the way that they're working together? And that is the nature note, right? You start with something you know, you make an observation, and you ask a question. And that is the basic pieces of a nature note. As you know, as teachers, as educators, when we're doing this, we're going to be looking at this in a little different way. But how did, for example, the observations you made in the second video, after getting some background information, compare with your observations in the first video? Did you observe different things? Did just even thinking about the experience of that, were you surprised, or did you find that you saw what you expected? Did you opt to record some things or think about some things rather than others? And did it feel differently? Yeah, it guided you about what to look for. Exactly. Providing a focus, right? And that was some of the things that was brought up earlier, that just doing observations, we don't necessarily know where to look. Yeah, paying attention to the different types of feeders, absolutely. So we know background information is key. That is a really essential piece. Right. Question about the preference. Yeah, so background information is really key because we need to give students context for their observations. We need to give them a focus. And we need them to move along in this process of making these connections. So once you have these three pieces, what I know, what I notice, what I wonder, once you have those pieces, you have a nature note. The continued observations and documenting of a set of nature notes, absolutely. Having repeated observations, just like Sima used that repeated process of making observations in the world around her, was really helpful. I know of some educators that will have students adopt a tree, right? And so they'll be with that tree and make observations of that tree over a period of time. And that process of looking and looking again is also a way to build up that background information. So once you have your three pieces, you really it's about moving them onto paper. And here you can see we have graphic organizers and templates to help with that process. As I stated earlier, building anchor charts with your students around key vocabulary or key concepts or conventions, for example, scientific names, is probably something that a student may not consider putting a part of the background information. But if you place that on an anchor chart, you look at a bunch of scientific observations or nature notes from other students from earlier volumes, you can start to pull out those pieces and create those so students have that available for them to see. I also put in a copy of a personal bookmark. I got this idea from Katie Copens, who does amazing things about integrating literacy and science. And it's essentially taking a piece of paper and folding it. And as students read through nonfiction text, writing down key phrases that they're seeing. Oh. And exemplars, that's really important. And practicing peer review. And something we really stress in findings from the field and nature notes is that it's important to remember that it's not about grammar and punctuation, but thinking, right? We're not writing so that we can learn how to write. We're writing in order to learn. And those are two very different things. Some other ways to incorporate writing and practice those skills is nature journaling. I'm a big fan of nature journaling. John Muir Laws has a ton of free lessons. There's a link here. I have the Making Observations module, which has some other activities that you can do to help students get ready for that. Reviewing articles and assessing them with the rubric. And so excerpts from text that I've found to be helpful. And just reiterating that it's learning. Is it learning to write or writing to learn? As I said, everything you could possibly want is on the website. So this is the website for findings from the field. You can find everything you could possibly need, how you can get involved, resources for teachers, for students, and for editors. We have adults and educators be a part of the editorial board. So when students submit, they're peer reviewed by another student. Once it goes through that process, it then goes and it's accepted. It goes then to the editorial board, and an adult is the last one that has eyes on it. They get the option to revise, and they can revise and resubmit as many times as they like. If you're looking for additional copies, if you're interested, I have all of the previous volumes, and I have many topics lined up of various things students have written about. There's curriculum and professional development, and information about the symposium, which is going to be happening on March 10th. And nope, that's not what I want. I get Sharon's slideshow mixed up in my head. Okay. And if you wanted to be a part of findings, you can complete the form that I've got linked there, resources and information. And as always, you can always start with peer reviewing as a way to get students interested if you're not ready for that level of involvement. That's Nature Notes. Expert observations are grounded in background knowledge. Published scientific observations are composed of background knowledge, detailed observation, and a compelling idea or question. Students need context, and sharing observations and exploring those connections through discourse is really how we have new ideas and questions emerge. And when they have a good question, then they might have a good experiment. And then you can just start that whole scientific process up. And I think that classroom resources, and I think that's it. Helpful links, citations. Do you guys have any questions? Stop share, stop share. There we go.
Jessica, maybe you want to say that out loud. I know John's not back yet, but I think that would be important for everyone to hear. Jessica, you've done a lot of work with Nature Notes, and then you handed off to me one day, and I did a little work. So you want to share with everyone what you did, Jessica? You can't unmute. Okay. Well, in the chat, Jessica said that she incorporated Nature Notes with at the annual Globe teacher cohort. And teachers really enjoyed it. They had expressed to their students do better when they know the students in other schools will read their work. So a little shout out for peer review. I was at a presentation when Jessica shared Nature Note at a Globe meeting, and she handed off her extra handouts to me, and I took it, and like 2 days later was doing a Globe workshop for a K-8 building, including all teachers, including language arts teachers, social studies teachers, and math, and all the rest. And boy, was there so much more buy-in because we had nature notes or nature note process. And so the language arts teachers ran with it, and they knew that they had to spotlight something at the end of the year. So they just kind of used that as their thing. But then a lot of the science teachers wanted to build that into their curriculum as well. So again, I can just say from our experience, it was a really well-received program and added a lot to what we were able to offer with Globe.
That's awesome.
A lot of other people, Tina said that Tina would like to include these. Okay, with the Globe Camp investigations, yeah, that'd be great. Barbie said that they use nature notes with the engaged teacher cohort. Awesome. Definitely connects to storytelling. Thank you, Virgil, for that.
The thing that I like most about Nature Notes is that it gives students an opportunity to sort of open up the door to what scientists do, not just when they finish with a research article, but the process of constantly making observations and asking questions. That's the big work of what scientists do, and students don't necessarily get a chance to explore that. A lot of times when we give them experiments, we know what they're supposed to end up with. And in this way, it's really everyone can explore and bring their own experience to it as well. Any questions or concerns about like modifications for different groups of students? Cool things that you've done with your nature note. Anybody is free to submit to findings as well. I'll just say that if you're doing nature notes, it's not just for Maine. We have some from New Hampshire, and we open it up to all of the United States. Wonderful.
I'll chime in about the findings journal too. If you do submit and get published, those get accessed from folks all over, and then they also have been cited in other people's research.
Yeah, thanks, Jen, for doing the unmute. I just wanted to mention that for others in Globe who might be interested, we in the Engage Globe cohort, we manage the peer review ourselves, and then we help those teachers then figuring out, you know, any of the students' work that got listed as a 4 or a 5. We help them publish them to the Globe website. And Catherine, you were mentioning something about modeling science practices. And that's an area that I'm really interested in and would really love to brainstorm with folks about how to very intentionally incorporate reflection of student practice through the nature notes process, as well as the whole again, really being intentional about maybe STEM identity and seeing yourself as a scientist through this practice. Because I was recognizing the last year that we did this, you know, we went through the whole process and it was great, and teachers actually really loved it. I thought teachers would be very put off by the level of effort that it takes to do peer review, but the ones that stuck with it found it very engaging and very rewarding. And I think you can take it to that next step by really incorporating, again, this idea of these are the practices that scientists go through, and allowing the student to reflect about their own abilities and view themselves as a scientist.
Yeah.
So thank you very much to our presenter, Catherine, and the Gulf of Maine Research Institute. Thank you for Robin for helping out also. Robin is also from GMRI. And we welcome this relatively new partner and in terms of an activity level. So we're super happy to have you contributing, and we hope that we see you at more. So thank you everyone for coming tonight.